All right. Biashara Tuesday on KUTV Rise today. Thank you very much for still keeping it here on KUTV Kenya. And please engage me on social media at KUTV Kenya, where we are streaming live on Facebook, at Richard_Kenya on my Twitter handle, and also KUTV Kenya on Instagram. Remember, later on after the show, we're going to have reels for you there, courtesy of one Sylvia Malasi. So make sure you check them out. We have very interesting questions after the show that we'd like to show you. So make sure you check out that segment. We've done a couple of them for the whole Rise today from Monday to Friday. Be perusing through them as we go on with the show, and then you can wait for more. Now, from the local to the global level, women and in leadership and political participation has been really restricted for quite some time. But women have overcome some of these restrictions, and they've rose to the top. They've overcome all those challenges, and they've now positioned themselves in a place where we can change the direction where we're going into the future in terms of how women are looked at and how they prosper and how they do in politics and in leadership, whether in private sector or in the civil sector, right, or in the public sector. But now, to put this into actual educational and well-researched and well-thought-out perspective, I'm sitting down with Dr. Susan and Susan Ngoiri Migwi. They are with me here on set. One is already Dr. Susan, one is future Dr. Susan. And it's interesting because Ngoiri has been here before on the newspaper review, where she told us about her dissertation in women, her final year dissertation that was focused on women and politics, women in politics, especially in Kenya. Let's get into the conversation. I'd love for them to introduce themselves, and then we can now put matters into perspective with this conversation. I think I'll start with you, Dr. Susan, because Ngoiri has been here before. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Richard.
Right.
My name is Dr. Susan Muangi. I am a lecturer and researcher in the Department of History, Archaeology and Political Studies, Kenyatta University. I am a mother of one handsome boy. I am a philanthropist, and most importantly, I'm very passionate about women in politics and leadership.
Right.
I did my master's thesis in 2004 on engendering political space.
Whoa. So it's something
which was basically looking at the role of women in politics in Kenya. Thank you very much.
Nice. And that is exactly what you did as well, Ngoiri, or similar?
It was quite similar. So should I start with the introduction?
Well, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Start with that.
So my name is Susan Ngoiri. I'm a final year undergrad student at the University of Nairobi. I studied political science, and my final year dissertation was an analysis on representation and the challenges facing women in politics, especially after the promulgation of the new constitution 2010.
Right.
Yeah.
So with, now that you've already mentioned the promulgation of the constitution, there were several things that were done there to ensure that we are leveling out that playing field across across a lot of sectors as well in politics. The two-third gender rule that is there, and as well as other efforts, including the inclusion of seats for women, women representatives, and of course for the youth as well. But now that we are on women in politics, since back then, when you were doing your masters, was the situation similar as it is now, and what kind of progress have we had up to now where Susan is?
Thank you very much, Richard.
Right.
I begin by congratulating Susan.
Thank you.
For taking over the mantle from perhaps where we left. Of course, you can be sure that when I was doing my study in 2004, things were very different. One, the place of women in politics was basically a situation of women trying to carve a niche for themselves. So women were fighting. This was a period after the multi-party elections, and women were trying to carve their space. So in Kenya, basically, we could see women trying to lobby. This was after Beijing 1995. And all along, women have demanded for an expanded space. So of course, after 2004, the space has been expanding tremendously. After the promulgation of the 2010 constitution, things have changed.
Yeah.
And as Susan is doing her research today, I think the place of women is very different. There are very many milestones that women have achieved in education, in healthcare, in agriculture, in terms of how they have finances that they can go into politics. That doesn't mean that we are where we want to be. But the space is very different. The space has expanded, but it is not as it was when I was doing my master's. I know today with the promulgation of the new constitution, we have the two-thirds. That means that we have many more women in parliament. So in terms of representation, we have very many women both in the upper and the lower house, and we also have women governors, especially in Kenya. And that is the case in Africa generally. We had the president of Liberia. We have very many other women. The African Union has a woman as a leader who has just ended her term. So really the situation has changed. And because of that, today I think we need to celebrate women. But even as we celebrate women, put in mind that we still need to go further to expand the space so that we have both equality and equity in terms of representation and mainstreaming the needs of both men and women. We cannot just talk about women. We need to talk about both men and women and their place in society generally. All right,
definitely. And now, as you said, of course, expanding that space to ensure even, and with restrictions that were there before, with the proven abilities of leaders being in leadership. And now, Susan, since you are, of course, now joining this conversation at a later time from when Dr. Susan was doing it herself, what is the role academia has played so far, and politics as well, to this point, to feel like we are now made progress? And are there efforts, as she said, that yes, we've made progress, but we need to do more into the future? Are there sustainable efforts currently that you feel are ongoing to ensure that we have that progress seen into the future?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of progress. I think one of the interesting things that came up from my research, reading previous paper, was one, seeing the increase in representation. So you'd see numbers from 1963 in parliament. Those numbers would be at 1%, and even till just the previous election before the promulgation, the number of women in parliament was around 9.9%, and then that number jumped to 22% after the promulgation. This is in the 2013 election. So definitely talking about these issues and coming up with policies that are effective for change have made us go further in this journey of making sure that women are represented in politics and are even occupying spaces in other places, not just in politics.
Right.
Yeah.
Why is it important, Dr. Susan, that we have women in leadership? I know it sounds like a very basic question, especially to someone out there who's like, yeah, we should have just everyone in politics. If anyone is a man, if anyone is a woman, let's just have a field where whoever gets to the top gets to the top. But why should we ensure that there are efforts specifically directed towards ensuring we have women in leadership and in politics across every sector?
Thank you so much, Richard. I think one of the things that we need to appreciate is that globally, women constitute about 49% of the population. And if you're going to design and formulate policies that affect 49% of the population and you don't involve them, then there's a challenge. So women form a very important category in society, and their role in politics must not be underestimated. Why? Women are very good at nurturing, and these same women are the ones who bring up the men, either as children, as fathers, as husbands, as any other thing. So if we don't include them in terms of representation in politics, then we are missing out on something that is very important. Women are very good at negotiation. Women are very good at mediating. So involving women in politics will go a long way in ensuring equity in terms of our resources. So I think the non-inclusion of women in representation, and for me, it is not just about numbers. It is much more than numbers. It is important to mainstream gender in all our policies that we formulate and we design, so that we are taking care of the most marginalized of the genders. So in this case, we are talking about the women. So that means because we are talking about the marginalized gender, then we are basically talking about the women. And that is why we need affirmative action. We need quotas for women to ensure that they are well represented for the future of the nation, because they form a very big percentage of the population that we live in globally.
Right. Streamlining gender across every single place where policy is happening. Susan, when you were doing your survey, which was involved in your dissertation for women in politics, did you find that did that come up as well? That we need to do the streamlining to ensure that in the future we're having women involved in decisions that are also affecting them?
Yeah, that came up, and I very much agree with Dr. that, representation is important, because, the whole essence of representation is being able to articulate issues, yeah? So if we are being able to articulate issues that are facing women, then we are able to, to be able to streamline our policies towards things that affect women and the society at large, and that's very important.
All right.
Yeah.
And now, so far, we've spoken about the need to have women in politics, the efforts that are being done, the affirmative action that is happening towards that, ensuring that we are streamlining gender and we are representing the needs of women by themselves and for themselves. But now we can't fail to look at the challenges that we've had so far, since back then to at this moment. But I'd love to know how the challenges were from 1963 to the promulgation, and how are they solved? How are they solved by the previous constitutions, and how that is changing now? I think from Ngoiri's perspective here. I'll start with you, Doctor.
Richard, when we talk about women in politics and leadership, it is not lost on us that an African society is a patriarchal society. And being a patriarchal society, male domination is the norm rather than the exception. So African societies view the man as the head of the family, and by extension as the head of politics, as the head of the economy, and other social aspects in education, in healthcare, and so on and so forth. So the challenge of patriarchy comes about as a result of socialization, the way in which we are socialized into believing that the man is more superior than the woman. And this begins at birth and ends at death. That is why in African society, when a boy child is born, we give the boy child 5 ululations, and we give the girl child 3 ululations. Already there is a mindset that we are setting for that child. So that whole process of socialization has been a challenge in African societies. Number 2, because we don't have a lot of time, we look at finances. Finances is very important, especially in politics and leadership. Traditionally, women did not have security because they could not inherit land. Dowry is paid for them. So whenever they wanted to have finances, they have to either go through their husbands or through their fathers. So that is a challenge. In politics, you need a lot of finances. Number 3, in terms of education, because of the way we are socialized, the girl child was not receiving as much as education as the boy child. So when you go into politics, you need education because you need to articulate your issues to the populace or to the citizens. So women were not having that. And because of that, there was very little networking advocacy that was going on among and between women nationally, at the grassroots, and at the regional level. Because of this lack of networks, women were not able to very well represent themselves or to come out. And remember that the Victorian ideology gives the woman the private space, while the man is given the public space. So the private space is where decisions are not made. The public space is where decisions are made. So that means the women are supposed to be in the kitchen. Their space is supposed to be in the kitchen. The men, their space is supposed to be in the public barazas. So traditionally, when a chief called for barazas, it is the men who attended the barazas. Right. It is not the women. So where would women even get the opportunity to engage in politics? So historically, we have seen politics being considered a dirty game. And this dirty game is not a game for women. So women were feeling that they would not want to go out so that they are not seen to be dirty. So if you remember, during the Kibaki regime, it was argued that we only had one man in parliament. But that one man was actually a woman in reality.
Whoa.
Because when you're seen to be strong, when you're seen to be challenging the masculine domain, then you're considered as a woman. So because of this stereotyping that we all have, then women find themselves with a limited space to engage in politics. So many of these challenges, of course, we are trying every day as women, and we are trying every day together with men through education. Because today, the girl child, if you think about the percentages of girls that have gone to school, we have a very big number of women that have gone to school. We also have networks that have been created. So the challenges are diminishing, but we are not there yet.
All right.
Yes.
Now, Susan, are those challenges, the ones she says are diminishing, are they diminished? Do you feel they have diminished?
I feel
with your recent research, of course.
Yeah, I feel that we are getting there. Yeah, slowly by implementing new policies, by advocating more for women, we are getting there. I think there's a very interesting theory that I talked about in my dissertation called the critical mass theory. And one of the proponents of this theory is a Scandinavian woman whose paper is called From a Small Minority to a Large Minority. And her argument is basically that we certainly do not need to reach, let's say, to a 50% majority for women, for us to see changes in society. Yeah, we need to get to, and she quotes this number as at least 30% for us to see more changes happening in the society with regards to women. And this theory is particularly important because just as Dr. is saying, that we need to be able to solve the challenges that are affecting the women, and we are getting there. If we increase the number of women, then these challenges continue diminishing. And as we have the 2/3 gender rule, from my research, you could see that the challenges are diminishing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Now, in terms of democracy, Dr. Susan, does the participation of women in leadership and in the roles of politics help stabilizing the democratic process?
Richard, when you have a population that is almost 49% not represented, then for me the democratic space is constricted. But when we have the majority of both men and women participating equitably and in terms of equality, because here we need to differentiate between equality and equity. We may have numbers, but numbers in themselves are not enough. I always tell my students when I teach them, equality is in terms of numbers, but equity is in terms of fairness and justice. So when we have both men and women participating in positions of influence, it is not just participating, because you can have an organization that have 5 men and 5 women, but 5 men who are managers and 5 women who are cleaners, right, and you're still saying that democratically numbers. So for me, numbers are not, yes, right, numbers may be okay, but we also need to mainstream so that the needs and aspirations of women are taken care of in any policy that is going to be designed. As we celebrate globally, regionally and nationally, most importantly, we have seen very many women coming up. Our CJ is a woman, Honorable Mother Akome. We have many more women, and we have seen companies, both private and public, that are run by women that are doing very well.
And board members.
And board members that are doing very, very well.
Right.
So for me, the place of women in leadership and in politics need not be underestimated, but we both need numbers and mainstreaming so that the needs and aspirations of the Kenyan woman are taken care of. Right. In terms of expanding the democratic space so that women have a say, let them have a say in the negotiating table, but also on the ground, right, so that they are making decisions. If their space is just down here, then we have a challenge. But when we have them making decisions, ensuring that they are doing monitoring and evaluation of the decisions that they have made, that they are implemented, then we will be going somewhere. And I'm very happy that Susan is here as as a young lady who is taking that debate forward and encouraging the young ladies to come up, to talk about their needs, to talk about their challenges, and to throw themselves outside there. When you see in Kenyatta University, women giving themselves out to engage in politics with men, for me that is a very important way forward to ensuring that the democratic space is expanded.
Engaging with men in politics. And it's interesting, when we started the conversation, you mentioned that we are largely in a patriarchal society all over the world, right? And we cannot forget, of course, we cannot assume the perceived role of the woman in the household. As you mentioned earlier, some feel like it's, or have been feeling since way back then, that it's the role is caregiving, being in the home, being in the kitchen, taking care of the children. And that does come up even in our local politics. When we're going into the next elections, definitely people who are women who are going to run in the top positions, kutakuwa na maswali ya, is she married? When is she going to have a kid? Did she have a kid already? What happens if she's pregnant and she's in leadership? If she's a CEO, what happens if she's going for maternity leave? Do we have an empty position? You know, such kind of questions, and those cultural norms and misconceptions from back then. Is there a way, since you've been around for a minute, is there a way you have seen this can be solved or has been solved, and we can solve it into the future? Yeah, you can.
I'll give you a discussion that I had just the other day with my male friend. And he was complaining that in his organization, they are 27, 5 are men and 22 are women. And out of the 22 women, he has 7 who are expectant. So he actually commented, you know, the challenge that we have is that when you give women positions, they will be asking for leave today. I don't know, I have a challenge tomorrow and the day after. Women have one thing that you must appreciate. We know how to multitask.
That's true.
I can, as I'm seated here, I am not just here. I am also thinking about my child in school. I am also thinking about my other child who is in the house. I am also thinking about how I will go to class. For you, Richard, when you are seated there, I know in your mind you're just thinking about this show. So for the woman, we know how to multitask. And therefore, for me, not giving women an opportunity to engage in politics because they have dual roles is denying them an opportunity, is denying the nation an opportunity to have a president who can be thinking about reconstructing the country and at the same time thinking about youth empowerment. Women can think about many things at the same time.
Right.
For the male, they will think about one thing in a box, but for the woman, they will think about many things around that box, or even not considering that there is a box anyway. So for me, that challenge is there, but I think it is a high time that we began appreciating that the woman can think about many more things than just one thing that is called going to vote. A woman can be thinking about going to vote, mobilization, thinking about advocacy. So she has a web of things that they are thinking about. So for me, I think actually giving women space is an opportunity to make the world a better place.
Young Susan, do you hold the
I totally agree with Dr. I also think there's a problem with the way we frame such statements. I think we, whenever we are talking about women, I think we make them feel that they need to be more capable than men to be able to achieve certain things, forgetting that sometimes men have had more advantages playing to their favor. And even when we get women to positions, then we expect them to prove themselves that they actually now make a difference, that it now makes a difference for us to have them in that position, which I think is very, very problematic.
That's very,
Exactly. Again, I like what Dr. has said about how women, think in different ways. I don't know if you remember, in 2016, there was a member of parliament, Honorable Joyce Lee, who was called by parliamentarians a flower girl. But the interesting thing about Honorable Joyce Lee is she brought the IVF bill to parliament just because of her experiences as a woman of not being able to conceive.
And that actually circles back towards Dr. was saying that you have to represent people. If you're talking about their issues, they need to be there.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely. Now, We are in 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. Which day is today? Should be day 16, right? Day 16 is on the 10th. Today is date 7th, right? So we are in those 16, day 14, day 13 of the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, which majorly affects women. And of course, this also affects their position in leadership, their position in politics, and we've tried to have this conversation for quite some time to reduce gender-based violence, to ensure that the government and their facilities that are eradicating this vice and towards women in society. Has it affected how women pursue leadership? Because I remember some time back, one leader slapped one other leader who was a woman, right? And you know, that kind of violence is not something you only see once. You see it once, but it's not something that just happens in the behind the cameras. This is something that is happening across a lot of homes, and this has been there for a minute since independence, I guess, and it doesn't look like we are changing that much. Has it affected how we are going into leadership and politics for women? Susan, I'll begin with you.
Okay. Yeah, I totally think women shy away from political positions and even other positions because of the violence that is meted out to them. And this violence doesn't always have to be physical. It can be emotional and sometimes even sexual, yeah? Mm-hmm. So we have around the campaign period, as you know, as you rightly said, there's a lot of character assassination, there's a lot of tainting of names, which is uncalled for and unnecessary just because it is a woman who's seeking, you know, a position. I think this problem still exists, and there needs to be, you know, there needs to be political will to solve these issues, both from the legislature and also from the executive. You know, also when it comes to issues such as post-election violence, when it happens, women suffer more from this violence more than men. They're the first ones who, you know, encounter all these challenges, right. Displacement, sexual violence. Mm-hmm. It's just sad, and it's a problem that these challenges haven't yet been solved. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. How do we uphold women's rights in that regard of gender-based violence to ensure their participation fully in politics?
One of the things that I think is important is first to classify gender and sexual-based violence. Mm-hmm. Because people think that violence is just the physical violence. But there is the psychological violence, like Susan has said. There is the emotional violence, where women, a man talks negatively about your engagement in politics. So if you come in the evening late and you were in a meeting to discuss leadership and political issues, you're actually considered to be unfit in the society. And in fact, the larger society is going to think that you're a dirty woman, right, because you're engaged in politics at night. Mm-hmm. That is what I talked about, the dirty game. Mm-hmm. So this, of course, affects our ability to participate in politics, our ability to do a lot of advocacy, our ability to do lobbying, our ability to campaign. Definitely it affects us. So how do you deal with it? Number one, of course, we have the Constitution. The Constitution is very clear, but the challenge is, as much as our Constitution is very clear, majority of the people who are in the judiciary are the same patriarchal men who are going to be making decisions. So for me, dealing with issues of the rights of women, because gender rights are also, women's rights are also human rights, mm-hmm. I think what we need to do as a society is to do a lot of networking. Even as we use the Constitution, we also need to do a lot of lobbying for women issues. Lobbying so that we have a space, you know, in terms of politics. Once we are represented adequately in the legislature, then we will be able to articulate our issues, because it is in parliament where decisions are legislated. So that legislation will be very important, especially if women do a lot of lobbying, a lot of advocacy on their issues, a lot of monitoring and evaluation. It will be very important that we begin from the beginning in the process of socialization where I began, changing our attitudes, both men and women changing their attitudes regarding the place of the woman in society. So in terms of using the constitution, in terms of using the state as it were, where you use the constitution, but also using non-state actors to do a lot of advocacy, to do a lot of networking, to do a lot of lobbying so that our issues are heard and heard well. Right. So if it means activism and going around, that has worked for very many women. Professor Wangari Maathai wouldn't have received the Nobel Peace Prize if it was not a lot of advocacy and activism that she was engaged in and using the constitution. So there are very many avenues that are available for women. The Gender Commission today that has a lot of women who are doing a very good job in doing a lot of following up on gender-based violence issues are doing a very good job in ensuring that the place of women is respected in the Kenyan society. Right. They are doing a lot of lobbying the various state and non-state actors so that the issues of women are included in our constitution. So really in terms of ensuring that the rights of women are taken care of, we are progressing well, but we will get there at some point.
Right. Ngoiri, Daktari has mentioned the equal participation of men and women in ensuring that we're pushing this conversation forward. How do you feel men should be involved going forward?
You know, even in the activism and lobbying that Daktari is talking about, I feel that men should be involved in doing that, It shouldn't just be a conversation for women, by women to have. We need to also sell this to men and make them understand that they should be part of this conversation, because they are.
Right. Into the future, as we try and wrap up, Daktari, anything that we might have missed in ensuring that this conversation and advocacy for women's rights, upholding women's rights, positioning them, helping them position themselves or contributing towards the efforts that women are doing in positioning themselves in leadership and politics, what do we do generally? Especially now that we're going into a political season next year. And of course, the role of women in ensuring we have a free, fair, and democratic process as well. I'll begin with you.
Richard, one of the things that we need to advance, and I wish that we can have this discussion another day, is to deconstruct our politics, so that we don't see politics as a dirty game. Once we have deconstructed that, because it's a construction. It's a construction because even the very concept of a woman and the very concept of a man is a construction. We need to deconstruct that so that in the future we are saying that we need to afford space for both men and women, level the playing field, so that both men and women participate equally in politics and leadership. And for me, the minute we lobby for more positions for women, the minute we do a lot of advocacy to ensure that young women are mentored. Susan here needs a lot of mentoring so that as young as she is, she begins from her university to engage in politics. And once she has engaged in politics, let us support her as men and women. Let us support her candidature as a president for KUSA if she's in KU. For Nairobi University is called KUNSA. Let us support these women so that they also feel that they are also appreciated in society. Once we are able to do a lot of mentoring of the young generation and we accord them space, then in future they will also be able to mentor the generation that is coming. We also need to empower our youth, especially the women, the young women, so that we give them jobs, they can get finances, they can get loans. It is a requirement that when you're going to look for a job, you need experience. For me, the question of experience when you're looking for a job is not here nor there. Let us give our young generation space, both men and women, so that in future we have this young generation becoming the leaders. For me, they are not the leaders of tomorrow. They should begin today, because tomorrow begins with today. Right. So let us empower both men and women, and especially for the young ladies, let us mentor them. Let us ensure that we support them in their education, in their innovations, and that way, then we'll have a critical mass, as Susan has talked about, of women that are aware, that are sensitized on their rights as not just women, but as citizens of this nation.
All right, and there is, in every single country across the world, politics is a very combative environment, and the key takeaway I'm getting from Daktari is that we need to ensure there is balanced political participation and power sharing between women and men. Now, Ngoiri, what is the key takeaway we can get from your dissertation as well as we try and wrap up?
I think for me it's that we need to start early. Some of these challenges that we are talking about can be solved by things like education. You know, having proper education for both men and for both boys and girls when they are young is a step in making sure that when they grow up, they can be able to engage in the political space equally. You know, I think that for me is very important. I also think there needs to be capacity building when women grow up. As you know, as Dr. is saying, women like me at a young age need to start engaging in politics and need to start learning how to compete with men in the same political spaces. If we are to reach proper representation, if we are to reach a representation that that makes a difference, that needs to start early. That needs to have a lot of training, a lot of networking. I think all these things can be done if we put our minds together.
Right. There's established and growing evidence that women's leadership in political decision making actually improves the decision making process. It's actually not, we are talking matters research here. But now, since we are trying to close up, I don't know, I've heard about your opinion before on a couple of the women we should be looking out for these elections that are coming up. I don't know whether Daktari will get political, but are there currently in this political scene we have in Kenya women whose push for maybe gender equality laws or electoral reforms, people who we feel are spearheading that conversation as well?
I think
what we should look out for.
I think without mentioning names,
right,
because this is a political year period and we don't know whether the women that were there are aspiring. We don't know. I think what we need to say is there are very many women that are outside there, that are women that we should look out for and support, not just in politics, but in leadership. As I have told you, I am very excited when I think about Honorable Mother Kaume. I'm very excited when I think about Honorable Mother Karua. I am very excited when I think about the various governors, Charity, Ngilu, and Waiguru, governors that are outside there doing a very good job. Honorable Gladys Wanga, Millie, Athiambo.
And women, in Parliament, they fight.
And they really, I wouldn't call it fighting.
Fighting for rights.
I would say that they are very good in ensuring that the rights of women are taken care of. I am very happy with Honorable Priscilla Nyokabi, who is in the Gender Commission. Women who are doing so much to ensure that the grievances of women and the needs and aspirations of women are taken outside there. For me, I will be very happy to see women governors elected, not just nominated, but elected. Right. Senators that are elected and they're women. I would be very happy to see very many members of parliament, MCAs, and let us support them. Let us look out for these women. In terms of leadership positions, let us support the very many women that are outside there in leadership positions, either in the private or in the public sector, that are doing a very good job in ensuring that they are also mentoring, they are capacity building women, they are training women. There are women even in this very university. We have the Gender Hub that is doing a very good job in ensuring that they are collecting data on the economic empowerment of women. So we really need to appreciate even our Vice Chancellor in the way he has supported the women in this university and outside to engage in various activities that empower women.
Right, and as sons of women, who would you rather give out the powers to take care about childcare coverage, if not the women who've been, having us grow up as steady young men and steady young women out there? Ensure that you are supporting the Women's Society as we head out to this new electoral period, and I hope that we can have this conversation again. I feel like we have a lot that we can cover. Now that I'm seeing here, as of 1st September 2021, there are 26 women serving as heads of state and or government in 24 countries across the world, and at the current rate, if you don't change anything, looks like gender equality in the highest positions of power, that is president and heads of state, will not be reached for another 100 years. So we need to ramp up that effort. Just 10 countries have a woman head of state, and 13 countries have a woman head of government. I think we need to, those are rookie numbers. You need to pump those numbers up. Asante sana Daktari Susan, and also Susan Ngoiri Migwi for having this conversation with me here on set. Very insightful in the, trying to, you called it gender positioning and streamlining. Yes, that is the word I was going for. Gender streamlining, so that we can have that even into the future. Anything that I might have left out, and your final words as well. I'll start with you, Susan.
I think there's hope for women in Kenya, in Africa, and in the world. Yeah, and I think there's a positive trajectory towards increasing representation, making sure there's a space for women, and even improving the needs of women and the challenges women are facing. I think more needs to be done. I think more needs to be done in terms of ensuring more girls go to school. I think there needs to be more done in terms of ensuring that women have proper reproductive health. I think there needs to be more done in terms of changing the perspective. As Dr. A talked about patriarchy, we need to change how we socialize our children into seeing women as leaders and as change makers in our society today, and we will get there.
Asante sana. Any last words, Doctor?
For me, it's an election year, an year that we see very many things happening, a lot of violence. I hope that we are going to have a very peaceful election period and campaigns. Let us support women. Let us avoid gender stereotyping. Let us ensure that we campaign in a very civil way so that both men and women get what we deserve. And being an election year, I pray that, Richard, you're going to invite for us people that are going to remind us that peace cannot be substituted for anything else. We need peace. We need a period where men and women are peaceful wherever they are as they campaign, even as the citizens are listening to those that are aspiring for political positions, especially for women. Let us listen to them, let us give them the space that they need. And I can tell you, when we have a peaceful election, we have a peaceful nation.
Right.
Thank you.
A peaceful election, a peaceful nation. And I hope for those conversations, I know bits of them might be thrown in your area of expertise. I hope I can have you back again.
Thank you. We are always available, me and Susan.
Santeni, the Susan Squared team here on Biashara Tuesday. We are saying balanced political participation and power sharing between women and men in decision making is going to make it better for us to have a society of equity and equitability between men and women in politics and leadership. Right about now, I am going to take a break, but coming up right now, next up is Captain Manu sitting with me here on set, and we are going to have a conversation on motor talk. Of course, as we always had after every single 2 weeks, there are motorbikes in Kenya that are worth electric motorbikes in Kenya that are worth 146,000 Kenyan shillings. Why should you have them? As well, Kenya Power is planning to power all electric vehicles in Kenya by creating charging station. How is that going to happen, and what is the rollout looking like into the future? And anything else that you want to know about cars, make sure you send in your questions on Facebook, Twitter, and also on Instagram at KUTV Kenya at Richard_Okenye. Of course, Captain Manu is not alone today. He's being joined on set by Joseph Mukangu, who's a sales and marketing manager at Vince Auto Center. They will be here with me on set. Tuongee mambo ya magari. Mimi nitanyamaza kidogo, juu sijui sana, lakini wao wataongea, so don't go too far. I'll be right back.